Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Andrew.
So do you have any New Year's resolutions or big plans for the 23?
This might be one of the first years that I haven't actually sat down and made a list of goals and resolutions I want to accomplish this year. I would be lying if I didn't tell you that I did not have a little anxiety on January 1st because I wasn't actually actively writing down my goals for the year. But
why do you think that is? Why no goals this year?
There's a freedom in going into the year not attaching myself to a list of goals, whether it's things I want to accomplish in the gym or places I want to travel or, goals I want my kids to accomplish. There's a freedom in just letting those go and actively working toward bettering myself, but not obsessed with these goals that I wrote down with deadlines and dates.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. So I think that's what we're going to talk about today's podcast, more along the lines of goals, ritual, habits, and routines, and how those can shape our new year and kind of some of the pitfalls and glories that we can find in those things. Want to talk about it?
Let's talk about it.
This is the podcast No Expectations, where we discuss all things spiritual, from Zen to yoga and everything in between, trying to break down the barriers in most people's spiritual path, discussing it in an adult and kind of spontaneous and friendly way. My name's Andrew. I'm a lifelong Zen Bodhisattva, yoga instructor, recovering yogi, and a particular fan of goth music. This is my co-host, Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen, a mom, a wife, a yogi, and someone who has found herself on this spiritual path in recent years. I consider myself on a never-ending journey, and I've been asking myself bigger questions, and I've been asking Andrew a bunch of bigger questions, and here we are bringing them together.
Yeah, no expectations. That's what we'll provide. We'll discuss lots of no expectations, how to maybe pull those out of your life and live free, and the challenges that provides. Looking forward to sharing those with you.
Maybe we'll make you laugh. Maybe not. Did you know that it takes 21 days to create a new habit?
I did not. I mean, is that good habits or bad habits?
I guess whatever it is that you're routinely doing, in 21 days it will become a habit, something you do, like brushing your teeth in the morning.
So, yeah, what's the difference between a habit and a routine? I think it's the idea that it's an impulse to do a behavior with little or no thought. That's what a habit is, right?
Yeah.
So you start to develop washing your hands after you use the bathroom or brushing your teeth, or I don't know, what else is a habit that you have?
Yeah. Eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner,
right.
just...
And a routine is probably a series of behaviors that we just frequently repeat, right? Some routines do become habits, but based on the research that I found, about 45% of our behaviors, our daily behaviors, are habits. So not everything becomes a habit. And how do you think we can work on making habits an everyday occurrence? Like, it's hard.
It's hard.
So so as we look at the new year, people are starting to think, I've got to make changes in my life. I need to start to develop new things, new habits for myself. And my experience with it is they start too big. We need to think small, how can something I can get my arms around. And one of the things that a lot of people come to me in the new year and say, hey, I want to meditate. And we talk about meditation. I say, well, what do you want to accomplish? Well, I want to be able to sit for a long time. Well, what's a long time? Well, I don't know. Days? So those are the kinds of things that I run into, and trying to create those framework for those people to arrive in meditation with no expectations. Because I don't know, when you first started meditating, when Jen and I first met each other in a yoga studio, I don't know that meditation was in your daily practice or daily routine?
No, I joined a yoga studio that you were teaching at several years ago. It was the year before the year COVID in 2020. And it was part of my New Year's resolutions to take yoga. And you happened to be a teacher there. And I know I wanted to take X amount of classes in January. And by February, I wanted to be in an arm balance. That was my goal.
Wow.
Meditation wasn't there. It was far away. But I think when I added do more yoga to my goals, I think I was hinting at somewhere deep inside of me, like, get on this path. And yoga has always been, kind of the gateway drug to spirituality, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, in modern Western cultures see yoga as only movement. It's being flexible, physically flexible, constantly moving, but they don't see the really difficult part of the discipline, which is sitting still.
Yeah.
And for example, on New Year's Day, I did a 108 sun salutations with a group of my students, which those of you who've never done 108 sun salutations, it's a very meditative practice where we consistently do 108 sun salutations repeatedly without any talking, listening only to our breath.
There's no music.
There's no music. Just constantly going. And one student who was their first attempt at 108 easily completed it, had all the physical prerequisites to do the task, finished, and at the end she said, well, that was boring.
I bet that made you feel great.
Well, but you get what you need,
yeah.
And so she was on this thing that it was like 108 burpees, where you're just going through the physical part of it. And didn't give herself the opportunity to enjoy 75 minutes of silence and maybe not everyone enjoys that. Maybe that's the problem too, right? Maybe that is boring, the silence.
It's scary. Silence is a scary place.
Right. So there was an opportunity to kind of connect those things, that yoke that we talk about in yoga, Y-O-L-K, not the yolk of an egg, the bringing together of the discipline of mind, body, and breath, and finding meditation in that. But even in that was difficult for her. So when people come to me and they say, hey, I want to meditate, in what form do you want to meditate? Is that peeling potatoes? Is that doing yoga asana? Is that taking a hike in the woods? Can it be all of those things? Sure.
Yeah.
Why not? But I think it's about starting small. And one of my early teachers, when we started working meditation, one of the first things he said was, don't force it. Don't force. And when you first begin, maybe you sit down and you find your spot and you put on a timer and you sit for a minute. And that's it. And you learn to sit for a minute. And then maybe you learn to sit in 3 weeks for 3 minutes. And over time, you just keep adding or subtracting. And then the timer goes away. But it's the idea of give yourself the opportunity to sit. And I think that's the thing. So talk to me about your routine now with meditation as we've worked together for a few years.
Yeah, so when I first came to Andrew, we had an established relationship in yoga asanas, and I had wanted to learn how to meditate in self-healing. I had an injury and a surgery date scheduled, and I had C-suites to kind of get my mind right. Physically, I felt healthy and strong, and I just wanted to be able to get through that surgery process and healing process with a strong mind. And through those 6 weeks, I developed a very strong routine where every morning I would get up and I would meditate. And sometimes I would repeat a mantra. Sometimes I would have music kind of like lowly playing in the background. But over time, it just became sitting without an expectation. But it took a lot of time. There were days early on where I would be there for 30 seconds and kind of stand up and walk out. Like, this isn't working. I'm sitting still for too long, and my to-do list is way longer. It took a lot of time, and it took a lot of discipline of keep coming back at the same time every morning. And eventually it became every morning and every night, to help me sleep, just kind of meditating and clearing my thoughts before bed. So it was not something a ritual that I created overnight, or it might have been longer than 21 days.
We all struggle with it, but I think it's important, when that's the thing that I tell new students when they come into this idea of meditation and sitting, is to create that space. And I mean, physically create that space where you can go to repeatedly. So I understand not everyone has a separate room in their house or a place that they can do that, but you can certainly put your pillow or your blanket in one spot and probably leave it there. Mm-hmm. And create that space for yourself to come and sit. And I think it's important to do it first thing in the morning. Get up, use your bathroom, do your things, get yourself prepared to sit without any expectation. And as a student recently asked me, he said, "Well, how long do you sit?" And I said, "You sit until you're done." And he said, "Well, I don't understand that." And I said, "Well, you sit until you're done." And he said, "But aren't you afraid of missing something? If you sat for another 30 seconds longer, maybe you'd find some great, epiphany or satori." And I was like, "No." I said, "Because I'm done. There's nothing else there." Mm-hmm. So you sit until you're done, and then you clean up your space where you've sat, and you walk away from it.
Andrew, the hardest part for me starting my meditation routine or ritual was being able to walk to my space and sit down and not have an expectation, whether it was a time expectation or some, big epiphany. It took a lot of training how often do we do something with no purpose?
But
especially every day of our lives without a purpose.
Let me stop you there, though. There's a great purpose here. This idea of self-study that we're going through is great purpose. But we, as a society, think sitting and being still, I'm of no use. But you're of great use to yourself. And that's the idea. If you're creating that great use, that connection to yourself makes you a better use, not only to you, but all of those people around you. And I think you can probably relate to that experience, right? Whereas you went through that process of self-healing, it helped heal your life exponentially.
Oh my gosh. I so many different ways. Like, we could sit and talk all day about how much of a better human I became through this process and calming my mind, and others who saw me do it every day, my family members, how they were greatly impacted by my ability to calm my mind and be present.
And to that extent, I see there's a lot of frustration too, where people, particularly who come to, let's say, yoga asana, a yoga class, human beings, we think that we're pretty good at mimicking other people's movements, right? Like, I can see you doing, a down dog. Well, I think I can do it pretty well, so I can copy that.
Yeah.
But when somebody's sitting in a meditative posture, and I look at them and I was like, oh, I can probably sit like that, but I don't know what's going on in between their ears. And that's the tricky bit, right? Mm. That's the tricky bit where people suffer because they're like, oh, I want to do what they're doing, but I don't know that I can do what they're doing. And that becomes problematic because it doesn't matter what they're doing. I don't know what's going on in your mind. Like, I don't know what conflict or what ideas you're trying to navigate. Mm-hmm. And so as human beings, when we sit and watch somebody else meditate, we struggle with that because we think that we're not doing it right.
Yeah.
And there is no right or wrong. It's just give yourself the opportunity. And the only way that opportunity presents itself is if we continually show up and repeat and repeat and rinse and repeat and can try it again and again. Will it always work? No. Mm-mm. But there's beauty in the failure.
Yeah.
If that's how you want to define it. If that's really how you want to define it. As I work with a group of high-performance tennis athletes, young adults, Great athletes struggling with the mental component of meditation and sitting, it's a win-lose in their mind. We'll sit for a long time and I'll say, how did it go? Not so great. By whose measure? By my measure. Well, who told you can measure it like that? Well, I don't know. I just thought it was because last time it was better. By what measure was it better? Well, I don't know. So we're constantly destroying the thing that we really need to work on. And we're saying, I need to be softer with myself, saying what I'm doing is good work and that's good enough.
Yeah.
And be done with it.
For me, hearing that I could take away the timeline for my meditation, and just there was a great freedom in hearing that just arrive there and just sit and don't start grabbing for things or searching for this great feeling. Just be there. Hearing that from you repetitively as I was developing this habit or this ritual was very important for my success in creating it.
And I think something I would say to you a lot during those early sessions was the idea of we have to have great faith, and it's great faith in ourselves first. And then we have to have great doubt, which we all have plenty of great doubt in ourselves. Mm-hmm. But we also have to have great determination. And continually say that to ourselves, that this is not every day is going to be great. Not every time we sit down is going to be magnificent. We're not going to find the secrets of the universe. But give ourselves the opportunity.
Yeah.
And know that the more we try, that they may be there somewhere.
Sounds like the recipe for creating a discipline.
Right.
3 parts. Right.
So we kind of wandered off from the main topic here of habit and ritual, but I think it is important when we talk about meditation that it is something that you do repeatedly. You cannot just show up to it one time and be done with it. So if you start to add it to your routine in the new year, think about starting small, think about attainable goals, and I put quotations around those. And like my mentor had said, start with a timer, 1 minute, 3 minutes, see what that feels like. And give yourself the opportunity. And when you're done with the meditation, take a quick inventory in how you're thinking. Instead of saying, I did that poorly, maybe think about the things that you did right. And maybe one of the things that you did right is just by showing up and sitting down.
Something that helped me was I had a journal that I kept nearby, and I would just scribble. Sometimes I would write pages and pages because that's what came out of it, was something that had to come out. But in those early days of my meditation development, I would just write down 1 or 2 sentences of things I was feeling after, not before, but just kind of after, and that helped me kind of. Holding myself accountable wasn't really what I'm looking to do there, what I was looking to do there, but in a way it did help me
process some
things that came up during meditation, and then move on, and then you leave it in my meditation space and go make my coffee.
Right. And it's like exactly what it is. Leave it there. That's also great. You're unburdening yourself. So you don't have to take that for the rest of the day if you don't really want to, right? You just process it through, write it down, send it out to the universe in whatever form it needs to be, and then leave it there. And then maybe pick up the thread later in the evening or the next day or 4 weeks later, or whatever that is for you.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great idea, writing down your post-meditative thoughts, whether good or bad. But give yourself the opportunity to enjoy the process and not there's nothing worse than trying to create a habit that you don't enjoy.
Right. Have you ever done that?
Well, I was talking to somebody the other day. They're like, "Oh, New Year, I'm gonna change my diet. I'm gonna do this and do that. Can you give me pointers?" And I said, "Well, no." And I said, "What do you mean no?" I was like, "She goes, well, I want to eat like you eat." and I was like, "Well, I could give you a whole list of things that I don't eat." And she was like, "Well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give up bread, and I don't want to." And I was like, "Well, why would you want to be on a diet of things you don't enjoy? Because it becomes painful." So sure, eat the things you enjoy, but maybe think about it in moderation a little bit. It's the same thing here when we show up for meditation. Find ways for you to help yourself get there. Maybe it's not staring at a wall. maybe it is playing music in the background. Maybe it is listening to a guided meditation. Again, I think after time, it is you take those things, what I call a crutch, away.
So I've just remembered I had a rose quartz crystal that I found right before we went into lockdown on a girls' trip in Blue Ridge, Georgia. And it was this rose quartz shaped like the state of Georgia, of all things. I don't know. I found it on a hike, and I carried it in my hand. And that quartz, over time, just became something that would squeeze so tight in my hand. And by the end of this meditation, I would see that either it left a mark in my hand or I had released it. And it's something that I no longer use, but it still sits in my meditation space as a reminder of the process that I've taken to get here. So, some people need the quartz or the beads.
Or the mantra.
Yeah.
Or the music or whatever. I think it's about finding what you need to be comfortable and not think that it's one size fits all because not everyone works like that. So, again, it's about showing up.
Yeah.
Showing up, and giving yourself that opportunity. And if you just do it once, you're not probably going to get the results you desire. If you do it 150 times, you may not get the results you desire. But enjoy the journey.
Enjoy the journey.
I think that's what it is. And then to show up with no expectations. Okay, so we're back with our thought of the day, and I'm quoting a Zen quote here. The broad, deep sky is unhindered by the passing cloud. What do you think about that?
I love that quote. It allows you to kind of soar above cruising altitude and go a little bit higher and see, there's so much chaos around us, below us, above us, but allowing yourself to rise above it and not be weighted down by it.
Yeah, back to the quote itself, broad, deep sky is our mind, and the more that we work with ourselves and be gentle with ourselves, the more we can cultivate that space, that depth inside of ourselves. And that when something troubling, which is guaranteed to happen in our lives, something distressing, some sort of external stimuli, stressor that comes into our life, that we're ready for it, that our mind is ready to accept this turbulence,
this cloud,
back to your, flying at cruising altitude, the turbulence, but be able to withstand it because we've conditioned ourselves. Our mind is strong, and we're not going to let something like a passing cloud come and disrupt that ability to maintain ourselves. And that takes work.
Meditation helps.
That's
helps. The best place to find that.
I think so. There's a lot of places to find. And, we talked briefly in the earlier segment, meditation does not always require sitting down. I've just passed over that briefly. I'm a big fan of, and I think we both are, of being in the woods by ourselves, taking a long walk. I know for myself that I do a lot of processing of thoughts, either creatively or emotionally, when I go for a long hike. I go out there and there's just nothing but me in nature. I really enjoy that. I also enjoy, cooking. There's cooking by myself. There is this meditative thing about, peeling potatoes or, prepping vegetables or whatever that is. And I find myself working in a different space in those types of meditations where I'm very, very aware of being grateful of what's in front of me and holding each piece of produce or whatever I'm serving with great care. even though it's what we would think is, a very cheap and disposable carrot, it's still something beautiful and nourishing, and I need to create it and hold it the same way I would a beautiful piece of sea bass or whatever it is, and finding that gratitude in those spaces too creates a meditative experience for myself too.
Just, do you think in that moment or in that space, the gratitude of where the carrot came from and how it grew and the flight it took from a seed to your hand for this recipe, and gratitude along the way of everything that it has gone through to get to you, and that's a really intimate way of giving gratitude in our everyday.
And I believe that's where it starts, and not to get way off topic from our quote of the day, but I think that's where gratitude starts, is in the small moments. When we walk into a room or we're in a spiritual lecture or reading a spiritual book talking about, developing gratitude. Gratitude begins with small things. And I personally believe it starts with learning to really appreciate the minutia things in life, and saying this is beautiful, and recognize it, and how that can, if we continue to develop that in ourselves in the way we see everything, then we see everything like that.
So when the thing that isn't as beautiful comes across, we have it's instilled in our thinking to be able to look at it and give it gratitude and let it pass.
But beauty is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you might find something revolting. I find beautiful. I don't know. Maybe.
There are definitely some things that Andrew finds beautiful. I have to send you a picture of the shirt he has on. Put it on the podcast Instagram. And it's actually a pretty cool shirt.
It's New Orleans.
He's wearing a shirt that is a map of New Orleans,
it's the Mississippi River.
But it looks like a snake. I'm going to take a picture. We are way off track here.
We are way off track.
I would like to talk about gratitude maybe in our next podcast.
Let's do it. All right. So, quote of the day is, "The broad, deep sky is unhindered by the passing cloud." Think about that next time that your mind starts to wander and you're stressed out about things. You have what it takes to get through that moment. You're safe in that moment. And keep building on that.